Some leaves were crushed on the floor as a man scolded a boy named Aki Guinas, calling him a disappointment. The man said he had already accepted that his firstborn Aki was a useless disgrace. He reminded Aki that most nobles were born with powerful skills. Even though Aki was good for nothing, his father had kept him around, hoping to use him later for a political marriage. He shouted that every member of their family had always possessed rare and outstanding abilities. But Aki's skill was nothing special. It was called Plant Eater, an ability that only allowed him to eat any kind of plant. His father said Aki's half-brothers had wonderful skills and blamed Aki's mother for having common blood. His words struck Aki deeply and he tried to respond, but before he could, the wall behind him was suddenly blown apart by an attack. The blast came from his own father, who said that the Guinas family had been given an important duty by the royal capital. This was a crucial time for them to gain a strong position in the central government, and there was no room for someone useless like Aki. He ordered Aki to leave their house. When Aki stepped outside, his half-brothers met him. They said he would be publicly declared dead in an accident. The second son, Jill, said he had always seen Aki as worthless, and now that he knew about his skill, he was sure of it. Trash, he said, would always be trash. The third son, Willem, told him he was no longer part of the family, and that they were even doing him a favor by letting him live as their servant despite his weakness. They added that their father didn't want any stain left on the family's name. Jill laughed at the thought that a skill like Plant Eater even existed. He found it funny that a useless person like Aki had gained such a useless skill, and said Aki might at least have the talent to make others laugh. Willem told Jill not to worry about hurting Aki's feelings since he would die soon anyway. Aki stood quietly holding his small bag. His brothers mocked him for having mana no stronger than that of a commoner. He could only use simple life magic, which meant surviving in the nearby forest full of monsters would be nearly impossible. Still, Jill taunted him, saying that his Plant Eater skill might finally come in handy. He suggested Aki try eating the grass around him. Aki was officially banished. When the heavy gates closed behind him, the guards pushed him away without mercy. The Guinas territory was surrounded by a tall castle wall that marked the edge of their domain. Beyond it stretched a barren wasteland and a thick forest filled with dangerous monsters. Being exiled there was no different from being sentenced to death. Yet Aki felt something else. He felt free. Instead of despair, he looked almost happy. For someone who had just been cast out, he appeared unusually cheerful. He had finally come to another world, but freedom had never been his to enjoy until now. Aki was actually a reincarnated person born into this world as the eldest son of a Viscount. From a young age, he was buried in lessons about manners, studies, and harsh sword training. It was like living under house arrest. They worked him endlessly, afraid others would discover that he had no real talent. Aki had tried his best to serve his family faithfully, but all that effort meant nothing once they learned about his single useless skill. For that reason alone, he was disowned. Still, he no longer had to live under their control or suffer their scorn. He could finally breathe freely for the first time. Somehow he would reach the next town and begin his second life in this new world. A few days later, rain poured down as he walked through the forest. Aki soon realized he had greatly underestimated how hard survival would be. So far, no monsters had found him, which was pure luck. During those days, he had managed to catch only a few small animals. With food running out, his only choice was to eat plants. His skill, Plant Eater, allowed him to consume any kind of plant without harm. It was a small blessing in his current struggle. The only problem was that most plants tasted awful. Even so, each time he ate them, his stamina and mana increased slightly. The effect was weak, but still useful enough not to be called completely worthless. Aki finally understood that his family, who only cared about gaining more power, had always seen him as a burden. They had treated him poorly from the very beginning. Now, far from them, he was ready to start living on his own terms. Aki suddenly heard a strange noise nearby. He wondered if it came from a monster hiding in the forest. Then, a girl with a long ponytail and an oversized hoodie stepped out from the bushes. She was crying, and Aki couldn't understand why someone like her was alone in such a dangerous place. Before he could think further, the girl stumbled, and Aki ran toward her to see if she was all right. As he got closer, the girl whispered that she was hungry. Her sharp teeth showed, and a huge plant monster appeared behind her. She repeated that she was hungry, and the monster's long vines shot toward Aki. Terrified, he ran for his life and quickly realized that the girl might actually be a plant monster herself. He couldn't remember reading about anything like this in his studies. The girl suddenly mocked Aki, calling him a fool. She couldn't believe he had thrown away his weapon and rushed in just because he saw a crying girl. She said a soft-hearted fool like him would die soon anyway and told him to stop struggling and just become her meal. But Aki calmly told her the same thing. He asked who the real fool was, since she didn't even bother to check what kind of skills her prey had before attacking. The girl laughed and said a weak human like him couldn't possibly harm her. She then sent her vines to wrap tightly around Aki's body. Instead of panicking, Aki stayed calm. He said that eating wasn't something a monster like her could do so easily. Then he bit into the vines coiling around him and started chewing. The girl froze, shocked to see him eating her vines. A system message suddenly appeared, confirming that Aki's stats had greatly increased because of his skill. He also gained new skills called Absorption and Swiftness. Aki said he wouldn't let himself be eaten for nothing. Even he was amazed at how powerful he felt. Strength beyond anything he had known was rushing through him, and he wondered what would happen if he ate everything. The girl couldn't believe her prey had turned into a predator. Furious, she tried to strangle him even harder, but Aki grabbed the vines and ripped them apart with ease. He landed on the ground, gripping the remaining vines tightly. His skill activated again, and he gained another ability called Valor thanks to his Absorption skill. The girl stood frozen, completely shocked and confused by what she had just seen. Aki pulled the girl toward him, making her fall face first onto the ground. He walked closer, his presence filled with danger, and told her it was time to eat. Terrified, the girl crawled backward until her back hit a tree. She apologized and tried to reason with him. Aki charged his fist with power and shouted that in the human world, it was common sense never to trust the words of a monster. He swung his fist toward her but stopped when she cried out that she still had a demi-human inside her that she hadn't finished digesting. Aki almost crushed her with his punch, but her words made him pause, saving her life for the moment. He demanded that she release the demi-human and told her to do it quickly. The girl obeyed, feeling sad since it had been her first prey. Her large plant body then spit out a beautiful girl with sharp elf-like ears. Seeing this, Aki realized what kind of being she had eaten. The plant girl confirmed that the demi-human was indeed an elf, and explained that she had trouble digesting her because of the elf's dense mana. Aki then noticed that the girl's huge plant body faded away, and understood that it hadn't been her true form. She angrily warned him not to pry any further, claiming she wouldn't fight anymore. Aki now believed she was a plant monster pretending to be a young girl. The girl shouted that she had a real name, Rin. She proudly declared herself a great spirit and said the giant ugly body was not her true one. Aki commented that he couldn't believe he had actually managed to eat her. Rin complained that it had hurt a lot. Aki explained that his skill, Plant Eater, had activated, which meant Rin was technically a plant. Rin grew embarrassed but insisted she was a great spirit, and that her small form was her real body. Aki ignored her excuses and asked her to help carry the elf girl back to his tent. Just then, the elf girl woke up. She was completely naked, with only Aki's jacket covering her back. Her firm melons were on full display and asked who they were. Meanwhile, Aki's father and brothers were eating together. Willem wondered where Aki might have died, saying the forest was full of monsters. Jill added that Aki probably could not even reach a town with his poor equipment. They thought he was barely surviving by eating weeds or had already become food for monsters. Their father then joined in. He said the dense forest was home to elves. Willem told him not to talk about fairy tales, but their father insisted that elves were real and lived in the forest beside their land. Jill asked what the elves had to do with Aki, but their father said it was not about Aki at all. It was something important for them, his capable sons. He explained that the elves had not shown themselves for over 100 years, but the Guinas family had long been given the duty of forming relations with them. The central government might not expect much from this, but the power and influence the elves held were great. The last human who connected the elves with the kingdom was still remembered as a hero even after 300 years. The reason was that elves possessed magic and artifacts far more advanced than anything humans had. Jill also remembered that elves were known to be incredibly beautiful, while Willem grew excited about the treasures they might have. Their father reminded them that elves were very hard to find, appearing in history only once every few centuries. He told them to focus on becoming strong men who could rule their land well. He himself had not thought much about the elves, but if they ever met them, the Guinas family could become powerful beyond question. It might even be worth exploring the forest again. Back in the forest, Aki checked if the elf girl was alright. He also tried to ask her name, but she seemed lost in thought, which he understood since she had almost been eaten. For now, he suggested they go back to his camp to rest and offered her his hand. The girl reached for it and asked if he truly saved her a second time. Aki was confused by what she meant. The elf girl then said she had been waiting and searching for him for a very long time. Now she could finally fulfill the promise they made 300 years ago. Aki felt confused by what the elf girl said, but for now, he only wanted to make sure she was alright. The girl suddenly remembered that a monster had just attacked her. When she moved, Aki's jacket slipped off her shoulders. Aki quickly told her not to stand. Seeing his reaction, the girl looked down at herself and realized she had been naked the whole time. Her face turned red before she fainted. Aki told her to hold on and called for Rin to help him. Aki let the elf girl rest at his camp. He wished he had some smelling salts to wake her up and searched through his bag for clothes she could wear for now. Rin then noticed that Aki, even though he was just a human, came into the forest with very few supplies. As she made that remark, she also helped herself to his food. Aki told her not to eat them and pointed out that plants could live just by using sunlight. Rin proudly said she was a great spirit and claimed she preferred eating meat. She also reminded Aki that he had gotten in her way earlier and stopped her from catching her first prey. Aki asked why she kept following him even though he had already let her go. Rin said it might be fun to stay with him. Aki didn't understand how she could call it fun when she had almost eaten him. Rin said the same could be said about him since she believed he would not eat her anymore either. Aki then remembered that he gained a huge amount of experience points from that one bite. Rin suddenly grew uneasy and asked if he was still planning to eat her after all. Just then, Aki heard a faint groan behind him. The elf girl slowly woke up and saw Aki and Rin arguing. Aki turned to her and asked if she was feeling better. The elf girl apologized for causing them trouble. Aki said it was fine and mentioned that it was mostly Rin's fault anyway. He then suggested that the girl change her clothes and offered her his spare ones. Before she could accept, Rin suddenly brought out a full set of clothes that appeared out of nowhere. The elf girl gasped when she saw them, realizing they were the same clothes she had worn before getting captured. Rin said she couldn't digest them, so she simply took them out. The elf girl went off to change. Aki then asked if Rin had really pulled the clothes out of her stomach. Rin explained that it was actually her magic storage. Aki was amazed, knowing that magic storage was a high-level spell. Rin felt proud hearing his words and cheerfully reminded him that she was a great spirit after all. Now that they were talking about Rin's magic storage, Aki thought that if it was a spell Rin could use, then he might be able to use it too since she had eaten a part of him. He raised his hand, and a small pocket space appeared out of nowhere. Rin was shocked and began to pout. Aki got excited by how useful the magic was and started putting his belongings inside. Soon after, the elf girl came back wearing her clothes. She apologized for showing such an embarrassing sight earlier and introduced herself as Saras. She thanked them for saving her life. When Aki finally got a better look at her, he realized how beautiful elves were. Rin, on the other hand, was surprised that her first prey turned out to be an elf. Salas was also surprised to learn that Rin was a great spirit and not just a normal monster. She explained that elves and great spirits shared a special bond. Elves borrowed power from great spirits to perform magic, and in return, they protected and cared for them. Aki then realized that Rin had gone too far earlier. Feeling embarrassed by her own mistake, Rin told Salas to become her nourishment if nurturing great spirits was truly the elves' role. Salas calmly replied that even the strongest great spirit would decay before being able to fully digest an elf. Aki remembered that plants could die if they received too much nourishment. This made him realize just how powerful elves really were. Salas added that if things had continued as they did earlier, she would not have escaped unharmed. She thanked Aki once more for saving her. Aki then introduced himself and Rin properly. He told her not to worry too much about being rescued since it happened by chance. Salas smiled and invited Aki to visit their village. When Aki asked if she meant the village of the elves, Salas confirmed it. While traveling together, Aki thought about how he had only read about elves in history books. It amazed him to see they truly existed, and he never expected to be invited to their home. He soon learned that his clan had once saved the elves about 300 years ago. He wondered how Salas even knew he was a descendant. Salas explained that elves never forgot their debts of gratitude. They had been told stories about Aki's ancestors since childhood and even kept their portraits. Rin grew excited at the thought of receiving rewards from the elves, but Aki reminded her she would not get any. He also admitted he could not accept any reward either, since he might only resemble his ancestor. They finally arrived at the elven village. The place looked calm and quiet. The houses were carved into the tall trees, blending with nature. The queen of the elves, Shilla, thanked Aki for saving her daughter's life. Aki nervously replied that it was nothing worth mentioning. He still found it hard to believe that Salas was actually a princess. Shilla seemed worried about owing another debt before they could even fulfill a promise made 300 years ago. She wondered how they could repay everything. Rin looked proud of Aki, but Aki reminded her that it was her fault and told her to at least apologize. Just then, Salas's sister Nieto appeared and asked their mother if the human standing before them was really the one. She questioned if the descendant meant to fulfill the promise could have been someone else. Shilla told Nieto to show proper respect to their guest, whom they were welcoming for the first time in 300 years. Nieto stared at Aki for a moment, gave a short and looked away. After a brief silence, Shilla said it was time to repay Aki for saving her daughter's life and for the ancient covenant passed down through the generations. She lifted her hand and several glowing magic circles appeared around her. Aki recognized it as a high-level storage magic which he expected from an elven queen. In just a few seconds, the entire room filled with gold coins and treasures. Aki and Rin were stunned by the sight. Shilla explained that it was only a humble token of gratitude, but she was offering all of it to him. Shocked, Aki said he could not possibly accept it. Nieto misunderstood and accused him of being greedy. asking if he wanted even more. Saras asked her to calm down and pointed out how rude she had been. Nieto argued that the great spirit who attacked Saras was the same one Aki brought with him, thinking they might have been working together. Saras reminded her that their covenant was absolute, and the fact that Aki and Rin were able to enter the village despite the barrier proved their goodwill. Aki then realized that this was why no one else had been able to find the elven village before. Curious, he asked what the covenant was about. Sheila explained that it was a pact formed between Aki's ancestor and their own, a bond stronger than life itself. Aki was shocked to hear that. Nieto said that while humans might not understand, this was something sacred to them. She explained that the covenant was a magical promise built on the trust of spirits. Sheila raised her hand and fairies appeared in the air. She said that for elves whose roots were tied to the earth, breaking their bond with the spirits who ruled the four elements would bring ruin to their entire clan. Aki understood that breaking the covenant would mean losing their source of power. Nieto was impressed that he figured it out so quickly for a human. Sheila then said it would put them in a difficult position if Aki refused her token of gratitude. Aki replied that he did not do anything special, and that saving Saras was something anyone would have done if they saw someone in danger. Still, he could not help but wonder what exactly had happened 300 years ago. Sheila walked to a nearby window and told Aki to look outside. Just beyond the glass stood a tall tree they called the World Tree. She explained that it was the source of the spirits, which were also the source of life for the elves. But now the tree had started to wither. If it had been left like that, the spirits and all the elves would have died along with it. Thankfully, a magic potion brought by Aki's ancestor had saved the World Tree, and in turn saved the elves as well. Sheila showed Aki a small bottle and said that the amount of potion they had left was almost gone. If it ever ran out, the World Tree might begin to weaken again. Once that happened, the weaker elves would start dying first, and soon after, everyone else would follow. Aki grew quiet. He remembered that in many isekai stories the World Tree was always known to produce mana. The spirits lived through the World Tree, and the elves lived through the spirits. By protecting the World Tree, the elves were also protecting the spirits. Now it seemed they needed this magic potion to keep it alive. Then a thought struck Aki. He pulled out his bag from his magic storage. While the elves watched curiously, he searched through it and took out another bottle of the same potion the elves had shown him. Everyone stared in shock, wondering how he had it. Aki said it was just a coincidence. He didn't tell them that when he had been kicked out of his house he had packed whatever seemed useful. Because his skill was plant eater, he focused on items related to plants. The bottle he brought turned out to be fertilizer. It probably didn't exist 300 years ago, but the idea of fertilizer was very common in his time. He realized the elves hadn't kept up with human progress for centuries. Nieto asked what Aki planned to do with the bottle. Aki handed it to her, saying they needed it more than he did. Nieto blushed and fell silent. Sheila, overcome with joy, hugged Aki tightly, pressing his face into her chest. Tears streamed down her face as she said she couldn't believe that just when they had repaid one debt, another had appeared. She asked what kind of reward would be enough this time and told Aki to request anything he wanted. Nieto nervously warned her mother that Aki might take advantage of her words, while Saras turned red at the thought. Aki asked if the World Tree would really recover with the potion he brought. Sheila confirmed that by strengthening the potion's effect with magic, they had kept the tree alive for the past 300 years. She then repeated her question, asking what he wanted in return. As Saras and Nieto waited shyly for his answer, Aki simply asked if he could eat one of the World Tree's leaves. The elves were stunned and confused by his unexpected request. Meanwhile, Rin had fallen asleep on top of the pile of treasures while the others continued their discussion. Meanwhile, in the Guinas territory, Aki's father was surprised when Lord Javel himself came to visit his home. It was unusual for such a high-ranking man to appear in person. Javel explained that as the Minister of Internal Affairs, it was his duty to oversee matters in the Guinas territory. He said he could not leave such an important area to just anyone. Aki's father grew curious about what he meant by that. Javel went on to say that since there were no major conflicts with neighboring countries, the nobles had turned their focus inward. Domestic matters had become their new battlefield. Aki's father agreed and said that Javel was clearly leading that front, but Javel claimed even his own position was not secure. He explained that peace often gave rise to hidden power struggles among nobles, and that was why the Guinas territory had become one of the most important places in the country. When Aki's father asked what he meant, Javel told him not to pretend ignorance. He reminded him about the rare treasure that could only be found within Guinas, the elves. Hearing this, Aki's father and his children, who had been secretly listening nearby, were stunned. Javel continued, saying that once every few hundred years, the elves revealed themselves to humans. They were a miraculous race that brought great wealth and helped advance magical knowledge. While most people thought elves were only legends, Javel said their existence had been recorded as fact in royal history. He also mentioned that Aki's father, as the local lord, must have been conducting his own investigation about them. Javel then revealed that a strange barrier had recently been discovered nearby. The one who found it was Lady Hina, captain of the royal capital's Second Night Order, who was known for being strict about rules. Javel said he brought not just the news but also a reminder of their long-standing connection. Anything found within the territory belonged to its lord, but he urged Aki's father to consider the bigger picture. Restoring friendly ties with the elves, he said, would greatly benefit the nation. The central government hoped to build relations with them, and the Guinas territory could serve as the bridge. If that happened, Javel assured him that marriage proposals for Aki's sons would pour in. Conveniently, Javel mentioned his own third daughter was now of marriageable age, and he remembered that Aki, the eldest son, was still unmarried. Aki's father was left unsure how to respond. His sons, who had been listening in, quietly stopped after hearing enough. Before leaving, Javel told Aki's father not to rush any decisions but to keep the matter in mind. He promised that the wealth brought by the elves would be enough to raise Aki's father to a high position in the central government with plenty left over to spare. Meanwhile, Willem and Jill were already picturing a rich and easy life if they ever found the elves. Even if their eldest brother died, they thought it would still be worth it as long as they made contact with the elves. They no longer cared about their useless brother and decided to search for the elves first, even if it meant burning down the entire forest. At the same time, Nieto, clearly frustrated, reminded everyone that greedy humans only wanted the world tree. Saras tried to explain that Aki only asked for a single leaf and nothing more. Nieto still refused to accept it since they had no idea what he planned to do with it. Curious, Sheila asked what Aki could possibly do with just one leaf. Aki hesitated to answer because he did not know whether he should reveal his plant-eater skill. It was common sense not to talk openly about personal skills. Then Rin suddenly mentioned that Aki would become stronger if he ate the leaf. She even said Aki had eaten her before. Her strange choice of words made the elves imagine something improper, and they blushed. Rin went on to say that it was her first time being treated that way, and that he had forced himself on her, which caused her great pain. Hearing that, Nieto immediately attacked Aki, who shouted that it was all a misunderstanding. He scolded Rin for how she said things and blamed her for eating Saras in the first place. Rin quickly argued that she did not eat her, only stripped her and chewed her a bit. Those words made Nieto picture even more embarrassing things. She complained that the barrier around their village was useless for allowing such indecent beings to enter. After Aki carefully explained everything, Silas finally understood what his power was and how it worked. Nieto still complained that humans never made sense, but Aki pointed out that it was his skill that was strange from the beginning. Even so, it was that same power that had saved them. Salas agreed and said it was also thanks to Aki's kindness. Nieto looked at him again but still refused to approve of him. In the end, since Aki had given them the magic potion for the world tree, Silas decided to introduce him to their people as their benefactor. Suddenly, the elven children playing outside stopped moving as they noticed something unusual. A loud explosion followed, startling everyone inside the meeting room. Nieto rushed to look outside and her eyes widened in shock. A dark and ominous aura was creeping toward the village. She demanded to know what that terrifying thing was. Aki asked what was going on, but Nieto said she didn't know either. She only felt a strange and nasty aura coming from the forest, spreading all the way into the village. Rin also sensed it and said that something incredible had arrived. Aki was surprised that she could feel it too. Rin looked proud and said it was natural for a great spirit like her. Aki ignored her boast and remembered how he once used the same magic storage that Rin had after eating her vines. He decided to try something similar again. He closed his eyes and focused his mind toward the forest. When he opened them, he could clearly see what was happening deep inside the woods. He exclaimed that he could see it through the spirits. Rin was stunned and asked how he managed to do that. Salas also could not believe that a human like Aki had connected with the spirits. Aki calmly explained that he could use the abilities of the plants he had eaten. Rin was speechless and felt like she had lost her sense of importance. Nieto, on the other hand, realized that Rin truly was a great spirit, and that Aki's plant-eater skill was something beyond imagination. Silas stayed quiet, staring at Aki with disbelief. Nieto then asked what was happening in the forest. Aki focused again and saw small monsters running away from something powerful that had just awakened. A huge bear-like creature appeared, roaring fiercely as it went on a rampage. Nieto asked what he meant by strong, and Aki said it looked like a demonic beast, massive and terrifying. Then he noticed something strange. The enormous creature had been sliced clean in half. At that moment, the elves sensed their protective barrier shatter. They wondered if the beast had caused it, but Aki said it wasn't the beast's doing. Instead, something even more dangerous had appeared. Standing proudly over the slain monster was a female knight who had just defeated it. Aki let out a sigh. The elves wondered if the dangerous thing was what broke the barrier. Aki explained that it was an unintentional aftershock from his sword swing when he defeated the demonic beast. Nieto could not believe that an attack not even aimed at the barrier had damaged it. She asked if someone that powerful had been near the village. Still, assumed that person was good since they had taken down the demonic beast. Aki could not really call them an ally, and judging by their appearance, they were probably a knight. There was only one reason a knight would be in the forest. At that moment, Silas brought out a magic potion and used her magic to spread the liquid. She said they were in a state of emergency and that she was relying on the one with the best chance of success. The fertilizer spread across the world tree, making it look fresh and full of life. Even Rin was amazed. Aki finally understood why the elves were so thankful for what seemed like a simple fertilizer. A leaf then fell from the tree, and Aki realized the fertilizer showed its true power only when mixed with Silas's magic. Silas told him to take the world tree's leaf, along with several rare medicinal herbs and plants that carried sacred power. She apologized for only being able to beg for his help before, but this time she asked him to lend them his strength. Aki felt incredible energy coming from every plant. His strength increased after eating only a few, and he wondered what would happen if he ate them all. A few moments ago, deep in the forest, the female knight struck down the demonic bear with a single swing of her sword. She quietly looked at the pool of blood spreading around the fallen monster. Soon after, another knight came running and called her Commander Hina. He asked if she was all right because he had felt an intense presence coming from her direction. When he arrived, he froze in shock at the sight of their subjugation target, a Grizdil lying dead on the ground. The other knights could hardly believe their commander had defeated such a powerful beast alone, and even more, with just one strike. Hina's eyes then shifted toward a distant part of the forest. She told the knight named Marwell that she had another matter to take care of and left the cleanup to him and the others. Marwell tried to ask what was going on, but Hina vanished before he could say another word. At that moment, Hina was silently panicking. She realized she had gone too far and accidentally destroyed a barrier. She wondered what she should do next. Although she had sensed this might happen, she had a vague idea of what the barrier was for. She knew she needed to hurry ahead and explain to those people that she meant no harm. Meanwhile, Aki and Rin sensed that something incredibly strong was moving quickly toward the village. They reported that it was coming at full speed. Nieto nervously asked if it was the same being that had defeated the demonic bear. Aki confirmed it was, though he had no idea what its intentions were. Nieto said there was no time to stay calm and shoved a handful of herbs into Aki's mouth. Aki tried to ask if it was safe to eat them, but the elves said it was too late to question that now. The moment Aki swallowed the herbs, a sudden burst of magical power surrounded him, stunning everyone nearby. The system confirmed that Aki had gained several spirits' divine protections from every element. He had also obtained the stat called Wisdom, and all his other stats had greatly increased because of the Plant Eater skill. The elves could sense that his magic reserves had suddenly grown stronger. Rin felt proud of Aki, but she paused when the system announced that Aki could now form a contract with a great spirit. It turned out that the contract was with Rin herself. She placed her forehead against Aki's, and the system confirmed that a bond had been formed between them. At the same moment, Aki received a new ability called Spirit Cloak. However, he became confused when Rin started turning transparent. In an instant, she vanished and reappeared as a tiny fairy-like being resting on his shoulder. The elves noticed that a strong spiritual aura was now surrounding Aki. Rin thought Aki looked much cooler this time. She playfully tugged his hair, trying to move his body. Aki lost his balance and fell, his fist striking the ground and leaving a huge crater. Rin found it amusing and wanted to try more, but Aki grabbed her and scolded her for treating his body like her own. At that moment, Aki felt he had regained full control, though the power within him continued to surge. He thought that even a spoiled great spirit was still powerful. Rin proudly declared she wasn't spoiled but super fresh. With his new strength, Aki felt ready to face the coming invader. He sensed that the enemy would arrive any second. Just then, Hina appeared, moving so fast that she couldn't stop herself. She realized too late that her speed had built up too much momentum. Aki appeared in front of her to block the impact, and a massive explosion erupted across the forest. Later, some elven children gathered to talk about what they had seen. They described a woman moving at incredible speed, followed by a loud whoosh and an enormous kaboom. As they looked at the aftermath of Aki and Hina's clash, they couldn't help but feel amazed. Soon after, Hina cried as she apologized. Aki then went over what had happened. He had just learned that Hina was an important member of the royal capital's Knight Order. She came to the forest on a mission, defeated her target, but got carried away and ended up breaking the elves' barrier. Nieto angrily asked how out of control Hina had been. Salas explained that the trees were burned and knocked down just from Hina running, but Aki managed to stop her before things got worse. Nieto argued that the village was already damaged since there was a huge crater. Salas reminded her that no one got hurt because of Aki, who even saved Nieto from the aftershock. Nieto blushed and glanced at Aki. Saras said it was lucky Aki came to their village and told her sister they should thank him later. Nieto quietly agreed. Hina apologized again, saying she often lost focus in battle. She admitted she was surprised that the eldest son of the Guinas family had that much strength. She thought there were only a few people in the entire royal capital who could have stopped her in that state. It was a miracle no elves or villagers were harmed. She was grateful Aki was there and admitted she was clumsy or maybe just rough. Aki realized how dangerous Hina actually was, but she did not seem like a bad person. He thought having a powerful ally connected to the central government was useful. Nito remembered that the central government was where the human king lived and wondered why they needed more allies. Aki said it was better to have more strong allies, since people in the world had different beliefs, just like the elves who built the barrier. Silas agreed. She said the world tree had recovered and their strength had grown, but it was true that humans like Aki and Hina had great power as well. Nieto pointed out that Aki seemed more dangerous since he could eat spirits. Aki quickly said that was a misunderstanding. Silas then said that just as there was once a covenant with Aki's ancestor, it might now be time for them to start an age of cooperation with humans. She believed that, like Aki, there were humans with power who did not misuse it. Nieto muttered that she might agree only if the other humans were as soft-hearted as Aki. Hina said this was exactly what the royal capital had hoped for. She explained she had entered the forest pretending it was to defeat the demonic bear, but her real mission had been to investigate the area. She added that in any era, forming a connection with the elves had always been a dream of humanity. Rin then appeared wearing a flower crown, saying a child from the village had given it to her as a tribute. Aki was about to scold Rin for disappearing, but before she could say anything, Hina suddenly moved. Instead of attacking, she stared in amazement at how cute Rin looked. She asked if Rin was a flower fairy because she had expected fairies to have light green hair and big magical-looking eyes. Rin said she was not a fairy but a spirit. On top of that, a great spirit. She jumped in frustration, and the sight made Hina's heart skip for a moment because of how cute it was. With her hands clasped, Hina said that great spirits were symbols of life and mystery, living alongside elves as sources of energy, and also fluffy, cute, sparkly, and floating. Rin asked what was wrong with her and said she was not floaty, only someone who carried the power of a spirit. Hina began crying tears of joy and Rin started to feel uneasy. Aki and Nito glared at Hina, which made her regain control of herself. She then suggested they focus on discussing their next steps. Aki said it was too late for her to try to act calm again. Hina dropped to the ground in embarrassment. Aki thought the situation was troublesome and said that ever since she was young, her ability to think clearly had stopped working whenever she saw something cute. Nieto could not believe a human like her had so many issues. Hina replied that it was better to be a little scatterbrained than a stiff knight who never relaxed. Aki then guessed Hina might be a military weapon humans planned to use against the elves, but Hina said she was different. She explained that even though she was a knight loyal to her lord, she was also a shield and sword for those without power. She could not accept cruel actions against others. And besides, she said Aki was with them, so the hardliners back in the kingdom would not dare act against the Guinas family, the only family with deep ties to the elves. As Hina spoke, Aki suddenly remembered something important. She said she had been expelled from the Guinas family and was now just a commoner. Hina froze, unable to believe what she had just heard. Aki had been kicked out of his house and Rin laughed at him for it, but he quickly punished her. Nieto found it hard to believe that Aki was someone with no home or address. Aki said that was why he had been camping in a forest filled with monsters, and right after that Rin attacked him. Even though Aki was a noble, Salas felt sorry that he went through such misfortune. Still, Aki said it worked out in the end because he was able to save her. Salas blushed and thanked him. Rin then told them to calm down and said that none of this would have happened if Aki had not been kicked out in the first place. Salas added that both of them might have died if Aki had not found them. Rin then admitted it was actually a good thing he was kicked out. Hina could only sigh. Aki apologized, saying that they could no longer expect anything from the House of Guinas. Hina said it was fine because it was not the House of Guinas the central government cared about. What mattered more were the number of powerful factions behind them. Starting with the Minister of Internal Affairs, Count Givel, some people were using their connections to the House of Guinas to grow their own influence by getting close to the elves. Opposing them were other factions that took a strict stance against elves, dwarves, and other demi-humans, trying to control them completely. Aki realized the situation sounded serious. Hina said it was not all bad because she had learned a lot about his character. She saw that he had been accepted by the elves and, more importantly, he had enough power to form a covenant with a great spirit. If people thought of it as the role of connecting the kingdom and the elves moving from the House of Guinas to Aki himself, then the path forward became clear. Nieto asked what she meant. Hina explained that the kingdom's political struggles could be split into two sides. One side was made of extremists who wanted to control demi-humans. The other side was made of moderates who wanted a cooperative relationship. But in truth, the extremists were easier to deal with. Saras asked if she meant they had to fight them, but there were many of them in the capital. Hina reminded her that she was the commander of the Night Order because she was the strongest in the kingdom. If those people wanted to fight Aki, who was equal to her in power, then the two of them just needed to work together to crush their enemies. Getting her seal of approval meant their strength was superior, but Aki believed the real problem was how to deal with the moderates. He knew simply saying he would become the bridge between humans and elves would not be enough. Hina said they might be called moderates, but in truth, they were a foolish group only trying to secure that role for themselves. Those who wanted to connect with the elves would likely try to get close to Aki from now on. Feeling disgusted, Nieto asked why people wanted to be involved with them so badly. Hina explained that to normal humans, elves were like a fantasy and a symbol of deep longing. If someone formed ties with the elves, they could gain great wealth, unknown technologies, and even beautiful partners. All their desires could come true. Aki realized the situation had become a serious problem. From this point on, Hina said it would turn into a battle of wits. Powerful people, royals and nobles would approach Aki with hidden motives. She reminded him to judge carefully who could be trusted. Nieto doubted he could do that. Aki said he was not that naive and claimed he was someone who would help anyone in trouble he met on the road. Nieto could not believe he was ignoring their warnings and said someone this soft would be taken advantage of. Rin called Aki a fool. Silas, who had stayed silent until then, finally spoke and called to Aki and Hina. She said it was a great blessing that the two of them had rare powers. But more importantly, they were good people. She said they should be thankful that the number of humans worthy of being welcomed had grown. Hina was touched and suddenly knelt before the elf queen. She swore she would take full responsibility for putting the elves who lived with noble spirits and mysteries in danger. She made this promise with the honor of a knight. Everyone looked relieved. Just as Hina decided to return to the royal capital to prepare countermeasures, she felt something was wrong. Aki and Rin felt it too. Aki finally understood how it felt when someone with clear hostility approached the barrier. Rin said the intruders seemed weaker though. Nieto asked what they meant. At that moment, an elf rushed into the meeting room and reported that humans were heading toward their village. Jill was leading an army. Aki apologized and said this was his personal conflict between brothers. He promised he would end it quickly. Meanwhile, the elves warned everyone that humans were approaching. Jill confidently led his forces into the forest. He had thought the whole story about the elves was a sham, but judging by his father's careful attitude, they must really live in the forest. A soldier asked Jill to at least wait for the family to give orders, but Jill glared and told everyone he would be the next head of the family, so they should follow his lead and find the elves. He already believed the elves were in the woods, though he wondered why his father acted so cautiously. He decided to hurry and take the credit himself. The other soldiers still doubted the elves existed. They knew a secret search was happening and that making contact with the elves would be important, but they could not understand why Jill suddenly led the team. Seeing how many men he had brought, they thought he planned to overpower the elves by force. They worried they might not win since legends said the elves had huge mana. Still, they had come this far and felt it was too late to stop Jill. Then some soldiers reported seeing figures they believed were elves. Jill felt sure he would get the credit alone. Even high officials in the capital wanted a tie to the elves. Now that one obstacle was gone, Jill thought he could bring the elves and the household under his control. He pressed the soldiers for details about the sightings and tried to learn whether the rumors about elf beauty were true. The soldiers said the elves avoided being seen, so they only confirmed their presence from a distance and could not describe them clearly. Jill called them useless and said elves did not care about lifespan, so they might look the same at any age. Since he had found them first, he felt no one would complain if he claimed a reward. He decided selfishly to take 2 or 3 elves for himself and treat them as his trophies. Someone suddenly spoke up and said that everything happening was not right at all. Aki appeared and said Jill had not changed at all. Jill was shocked to see him alive. The soldiers were also stunned because they had heard that the eldest young master had died in a forest accident. Jill angrily asked why someone useless like Aki was even there. Rin then came out from behind and asked Aki who was making all the noise. Aki said Jill was his brother. Rin calmly said Jill looked much weaker than Aki. Jill could not believe he was being told he was weaker than someone he always looked down on. He then mocked Aki and asked what a useless exile like him was doing in the forest. He guessed Aki had become arrogant and tried to find the elves on his own. But Jill froze when he noticed the elves standing behind Aki. Aki told the elf girls to stay hidden behind him. Salas refused and said it was their village's problem too and that she would help. Jill could not accept that someone slow, useless, and banished from his own home dared to stand ahead of him. He called Aki lucky but said he would never be welcome back home and declared the elves as his own. He shouted that the family house and the elves belonged to him and told Aki to spend the rest of his life crawling on the ground. Aki stayed calm and said Jill's way would never work. He told him that if he wanted the elves' strength, he needed to respect them. Jill told him to shut up and said he had no right to lecture him. He said Aki was still as annoying as ever and had forgotten his place. Jill claimed this was the perfect chance to show his power and use Aki as an example to gain an advantage in his talks with the elves. He said Aki should have been dead anyway and ordered his soldiers to kill him. The soldiers hesitated because Aki was still the eldest young master, their rightful leader. When they suggested reporting to the family head, Jill cut some of them down without a second thought. He could not believe they still did not know their place. He shouted at them to stay silent and obey him. The soldiers, with no other choice, attacked Aki. Nieto asked worriedly if they would be fine. Hina drew her sword and said their opponents were no threat to her or Aki. She swiftly cut down the soldiers with ease. The only concern she had was whether she could still hold back. Aki asked her not to injure them too badly. At the same time, Saras healed the injured soldiers. She said her power was small, but when it came to healing, she could help. Nieto asked why her sister was helping a human. Saras reminded her that a human had saved her too. Seeing Jill now standing alone, Aki said there was nothing to worry about anymore. He said it was fine to only hold back a little. Jill stepped back in fear and confusion, unsure of what was happening. Aki and Hina stood in front of him, surrounded by Jill's unconscious soldiers. Soon after, Jill and his men were tied up and taken to the elf village. He warned them about the consequences and declared that he was the heir of the Guinas household, not an outcast like Aki. He shouted that a worthless nobody would not get away after treating him like this. Nieto could not believe what she saw. Even after being captured, Jill still acted proud, and she started to doubt whether he was truly Aki's brother. Aki explained they did not share the same mother. Rin found it amusing that Jill could not even touch Aki after calling him a nobody. Earlier, Aki had asked Jill if he still wanted to continue and told him to give up. Aki only dodged Jill's attacks with no effort. He found it troublesome to avoid hurting his brother. Jill angrily told them not to get full of themselves just because they got lucky. Rin found him irritating and thought about roughing him up more. Even though there was a huge difference in strength, Aki did not feel like hurting Jill. In the past, when he lived at home, he could not beat Jill in swordsmanship, and would always end up being beaten badly. But now, even without using Rin's spirit cloak skill, Jill's movements looked slow to Aki's eyes. He had eaten many things besides the world tree's leaf, and the plants in the elf village were truly special. He wondered what would happen if he kept eating plants like those. Nieto asked what they should do with Aki's brother. She saw he was not sorry at all and suggested throwing him to the monsters as feed. Aki scratched his head and said there were still a few ways to deal with the situation, but he could not let Jill go home without making him understand the danger. He warned Jill that entering elf territory like this also put his own life and his household at risk. Jill did not believe someone like Aki could do anything serious. He said he would become the next family head and a great noble. He claimed even the Night Order from the royal capital would not stay quiet if Aki tried to arrest him. He argued that Aki only defeated him because he let his guard down. He mocked Aki, calling him a weak failure, and said that useless shut-ins could never win against the elite knights. He even said they could burn the whole forest if they wanted. Nieto asked if humans truly started wars in such reckless ways. Aki replied that the kingdom would not act over something this small. Jill said someone like Aki would never understand. He claimed this could be twisted into a story about the heir of a nearby lord being unfairly captured. He said the truth could be changed depending on who told the story, just like how Aki's exile had turned into a rumor about him dying helplessly in the forest. Aki wondered if Jill was really talking about changing stories based on who spread them. Jill reminded him he was the rightful heir of the Guinas family and said his words were like the law. He claimed no one would trust a failure like Aki or a group of elves who hid from the world. Hina finally spoke and said that in that case, she would handle it. She saw that Jill's judgment had been clouded, and it was shocking that they exiled Aki and chose someone like him as the heir instead. Jill angrily asked who she thought she was to speak to him like that. Hina pointed her sword at his face, told him to be quiet, and said he should not disgrace humanity any more than he already had. With a shaking voice, Jill reminded them that he was the son of a great noble who protected the frontier of an important nation, and that no one there was more important than him, the heir. Hina made it clear he was wrong. She said he was no noble in this situation. She explained that the worth of a human who had not yet been confirmed as the next lord was not as high as he believed, since it was a position that could easily be taken away. Jill shouted that she should not compare him to the weak Aki. He claimed he was the next lord of the Guinas household and was born different from trash like them. He said it was their duty to follow his orders. Hina then asked him a simple question. She wondered whose words the king would believe more, hers as the commander of the royal capital's first night order, or his as a mere so-called heir. Jill froze in shock. Hina could not believe Jill failed to recognize her because he was too busy shouting. She said that his terrible act against their allies, the elves, had already become something she must report, both as a knight and as a citizen of the kingdom. Jill stood speechless. Hina then turned to the elves and knelt. She gave a formal apology to the elven queen as a citizen of the royal capital. She promised to take full responsibility for what happened and asked for a proper meeting at another time. Jill could only stand there in silence, stunned by the truth. Soon after, Rin repeated Hina's words about taking responsibility and turned them against her. She said Hina might have acted confident earlier, but she was the one who broke the barrier in the first place. Hina, still kneeling, felt guilty. Aki pointed out that repairing the barrier was an even harder task. Nito complained that standing guard to stop monsters from entering the village was a hassle. Silas asked everyone to calm down. She knew Hina had done her best to protect them without letting anyone get hurt, and she was grateful for her honesty. Hina felt moved and allowed herself to be comforted by the elven queen. After that, Aki said they needed to discuss things both with his family and the kingdom. Silas agreed and said the elves also needed a meeting with the kingdom. However, Aki suggested fixing the barrier first since he thought his father might already be searching for the elven village. Silas offered to use her own mana to support the barrier for a while. Saras reminded them that the world tree had already regained its strength. She said her mother, as one of the village elders, was connected to the world tree through her mana. Aki focused and could clearly feel the power of the world tree flowing from Silas. He wondered if eating a leaf from the world tree made him feel slightly connected to it too. Nieto told him to stop staring at her beautiful mother and called him a pervert. Aki said that was not his intention. Silas laughed at her jealous daughter, but Nieto told her not to misunderstand. Silas then explained that she could not leave the village while maintaining the barrier. Because of that, she planned to send her daughters Saras and Nieto as her representatives to the kingdom. The sisters were shocked. Hina worried if that was really all right and suggested sending someone from the kingdom instead. Silas said she would restore the barrier soon, but anyone who tried to cause harm would be forced to wander the forest forever. She said a single envoy might make it through, but a larger group would not reach the village. Hina was surprised a barrier so powerful even existed. Aki said the forest was already confusing and even he might have trouble finding the village once the barrier was fully active. Silas asked what he meant and gently pulled his head to rest on her chest. She said the world tree would now guide him since he was already like family to the elves. Nieto quickly pushed Aki away and angrily asked what he was trying to do to her mother. Aki tried to explain that he was the one who got hugged without warning. Nieto ignored him and said he could only return to the village if he was with her. Silas giggled, and Saras asked her to stop. Saras then asked if Nieto was really fine with going to a human kingdom since she once swore never to leave the village. Nieto said they had no choice, and she was more worried about Saras. She feared Saras might get eaten by a spirit again. Rin quietly promised not to eat her again. Aki guessed that he, Saras, and Nieto would go together. He wondered if Hina would join them. Hina said she would go separately because she needed to escort Jill and his men to the royal capital first. She said her squad should be nearby and she would meet them soon. She asked them to let her stay there until they arrived, even if it seemed a little embarrassing. Aki wondered if her squad could even find the village since the path to it was nearly impossible to locate. Hina told him not to worry because her vice commander Marwell was always good at searching the area for her whereabouts. At that moment, Marwell called out to Hina and said they had been searching for her. Nieto asked how he even managed to get inside. Hina said that was simply the kind of person Marwell was. Nieto then noticed the demonic bear lying dead on the cart. Aki thought it must have been the monster Hina had defeated. Nieto said it was around the time that the monster known as the Scourge of the Forest was supposed to awaken, but she never expected a human to defeat it with a single strike, and even break the barrier with just the aftershock. As an apology, Hina wanted to offer the demonic creature's remains to the elves who lived by hunting. However, she still needed to submit the monster to the kingdom as proof that she had defeated it. So she offered the other monsters she had killed along the way instead. She asked the elves to make use of them for the village. Nieto was left speechless. This clumsy knight turned out to be a real menace. Outside, Marwell looked around with amazement. He could not believe he was standing in a real elven village. He asked his commander for permission to spend a little time learning from the villagers. Hina then ordered her group to return to the royal capital right away. Before leaving, she handed Aki a document and told him to show it to the guards when he reached the capital so he could contact her. She told him to read it carefully because the second page listed the names of nobles in the area whom they could trust. Aki gave his thanks. After the captured enemies were loaded into the carts, Hina and her soldiers left the village. As he watched them leave, Aki finally understood that Hina truly was the commander of the Night Order, and Saras believed that was Hina's real nature. Rin felt relieved that they were gone. Aki thought Rin had grown used to Hina by the end, even though Rin remembered how Hina sometimes looked at her in a strange way. Rin knew she could not lower her guard. Aki wished Hina had stayed to keep Rin under control, but it was already time for them to move as well. He wondered if it was really fine to travel to the royal capital on foot. The elven sisters did not know what to do either because they lived as wanderers. Aki admitted he rarely left his own land, so he was also clueless about the world outside. Saras reminded him about the second page in Hina's document and thought it might help them. Aki opened the letter and looked through the list of trusted nobles they could visit. To his surprise, he spotted a familiar name, Count Luis. The girls wanted to know if Aki knew him. Aki said he did in a way, but he found it strange to see Luis included on the list. Saras asked what he meant, and Aki remembered seeing Luis at noble gatherings before. Luis acted like a proud and selfish noble who loved power more than anything. Rin thought that made him untrustworthy. Aki did not fully agree or deny it, but after looking closer he noticed the letter was not addressed to Count Luis. It was addressed to Felina. Nieto asked if Felina was Luis's wife or daughter. Aki said she was his daughter. He had never spoken to her directly, but had seen her at events standing beside her father. He did not have a strong positive impression of her either. Saras assumed the daughter was the same as the father. However, Nieto pointed out that Felina's name was actually at the top of the list of recommendations. Aki then remembered that Felina acted more like a proper noble compared to her father. That was probably why her father's behavior felt even worse. Aki could not imagine Hina lying about this. With his current strength, he believed he could handle whatever might happen. For now, he thought they had no other choice but to start their journey. At the same time, a noble lady became angry and slammed a stack of papers on the table. She complained that it was nothing more than a summary of an old book. Her butler explained that it was the most recent information they could gather. Felina asked in a cold voice if he was making excuses and ordered him to redo it. The butler hesitated as if he wanted to ask something. Felina asked what it was. He quietly asked what she planned to do with all the information she was collecting about demi-humans. Felina glared at him without saying a word. The butler quickly left and promised to begin the preparations right away. Felina let out a tired sigh and sat on her couch. She thought it was still not enough. She felt she did not have enough of anything, whether it was political power, money, or personal strength. So she believed the least she could do was gather information. If she did not do that, she would not be able to protect anything important to her. Meanwhile, Aki stared in amazement while riding a carriage that Rin was driving. The elven sisters sat quietly at the back as the carriage moved along the road. Aki felt surprised and filled with awe when he saw the trees quietly moving aside. He thought it was because of Salas and Nieto's powers. He found the elves amazing. Salas felt glad they could help, but Nieto worried if they were really going the right way. Aki only had a rough idea of the path, yet Count Luis's land was not too far, and his mansion was supposed to be large, so it seemed impossible to miss. Even if they got lost, they had plenty of supplies that Hina had shared with them. The horses also followed Rin very well for some unknown reason. Salas said they could talk to all things through spirits and believed Aki could feel it too if he focused. Aki then understood that was why the trees moved aside for them. He found this world even more amazing. Nieto asked if it was alright to ignore Aki's problems with his family, especially with his dangerous brother. Aki knew things were probably chaotic back home, but he could already imagine what was happening. Jill was most likely acting on his own, and since Hina went straight to the royal capital, Aki thought it would take longer for his family to learn the truth. His father and other brother were both sensible, which made him uneasy, but their fighting skills were not like Jill's. It would be worse to face them now and give them only part of the information. Letting Jill act freely for now would make him take responsibility later. Rin believed Jill would do something foolish again because he was Aki's brother. Aki then mentioned offering Rin as a hug pillow for Hina the next time they met. Rin panicked and ran to Salas saying Aki was treating her unfairly. Nieto worried and asked if they would really be safe. She said elves did not live in hiding for no random reason, and they clearly knew how unreasonable humans could be. Aki noticed how tense she was and gently patted her head to calm her. Nieto's cheeks turned red. Aki said there was no one in his family who could break through Silas's barrier, and they had strengthened it with his and Rin's spirit magic before leaving the village. He also said someone as powerful as Hina was on the elves' side. He reminded her that he had grown much stronger after eating the leaf of the world tree. They would also notice right away if anything happened to the barrier. Rin agreed, saying her minions were watching carefully. Nieto had no way to argue with that. She said even a fallen great spirit was still a great spirit. Rin responded that she had not fallen but still fine. Nieto said it was only a figure of speech. After that, Aki reminded everyone that they were heading to the fief of Count Luis for the time being. Nieto complained that he should not end the topic like that and should focus on stopping his great spirit instead. Meanwhile, in the Luis estate, the Count went through several documents. A report had arrived saying that a group of thieves had taken over the goblin nest that had been cleared outside the fief's borders. A servant explained that many adventurers and merchants traveling through that place had become victims one after another. The Count sighed because he knew it was a serious issue. He then asked about his daughter. The servant said the young lady had locked herself in her study to research something, and they believed it was about demi-humans, especially elves. The count remembered that forming a connection with the elves was a long-time wish of their kingdom. The night order had already been sent out, so it was likely that different demi-humans would be found sooner or later. He asked the servant what he thought about demi-humans. The servant answered that he would like to speak with them if he ever had the chance. Elves especially were like the beings from old stories he had heard when he was a child. The count agreed that it was fine for ordinary people to think that way. However, those who ruled could not be so simple. They had to think carefully about the many problems that could appear between different races. He wondered if his daughter truly understood this. After thinking for a moment, he told the servant to send a copy of his documents to Felina. He chose to leave the whole matter in her hands. If she could bring peace to the land, then he, as the head of House Luis, would support her goals. But if she failed, he ordered that she must be told the family leadership would pass to her younger brother, Milt. Aki said it was the perfect day for a walk, and Salas agreed. Ida wished their ride had not been completely ruined. About an hour earlier, Rin had pulled the horses to a stop while they traveled through the forest. She was excited. Aki had warned her that even if they avoided the trees, they could still hit a rock. Rin said it would be fine because she was watching the road. But then the cart hit a rock and crashed. Nieto asked in frustration what they were supposed to do now. Rin felt guilty. Even so, Nieto was relieved that no one was hurt. Aki said he could use his storage magic to pack away their things. They would reach Count Luis's land soon anyway. Nieto complained that Aki spoiled Rin too much just because she was his spirit companion. Aki explained that Rin was more like a trained wild creature. Then they heard someone screaming for help. A man wearing armor stumbled out of the bushes. He said something terrible had happened and begged for help. Aki noticed the family crest on his armor. He told the man to stay calm and asked what had happened. The man said that their young lady, Felina, had been taken by bandits. At the same time, inside a cave, a group of rough bandits laughed. They could not believe they had captured a count's daughter so easily. They thought Felina would sell for a high price. Their leader had ordered them not to harm her or damage anything she wore. Still, they felt it was a waste to have such a valuable prize sitting in front of them without using it. Aki remembered that the crest on the armor belonged to the private soldiers of House Luis. He wondered why a noble lady had been captured by bandits. The soldier said the young lady had been sent to deal with a bandit group. Their hideout was just an old goblin nest, and one of their men had been careless and was caught. The young lady decided to take his place, and before anyone could stop her, the bandits captured her. Salas asked if Felina, the young lady mentioned, was the one they were supposed to meet, and Aki confirmed it. Nieto then thought about whether they could trust the human soldier in front of them. The soldier tried to argue, but he was shocked when he realized the two girls were real elves. Rin introduced herself as the most amazing among them, a great spirit. The soldier was stunned, and just as he started to question who they really were, he noticed that Aki was the heir of House Guinas. Aki explained that he was now only the former heir. He then focused on more important matters and asked the soldier for every detail about the situation, such as the number of bandits and the location of their hideout. The soldier said the bandit base was close by and there were at least 30 of them. Their mission had only been meant to check the area, so they had brought few soldiers. However, they were suddenly surrounded in the forest. The young lady was very beautiful, and he feared the bandits were doing something terrible to her at that moment. He cried out in panic and blamed himself for putting her in danger. Salas could see that something serious had happened, and it truly caused worry. Aki explained that Felina was the daughter of a count, so even if the bandits asked for money or tried to sell her to slavers, they would not harm her easily. Even so, Nieto still felt concerned about the young lady. Aki then asked what the other soldiers were doing. The soldier said they had gone straight back to the manor to report the attack and ask for more help. He was ordered to search the area for any trustworthy adventurers. Aki said he had planned to meet Felina anyway, so he told the soldier to lead him there. The soldier felt relieved that Aki was coming, but he hesitated and asked about Aki's guards. Since Aki was the heir of House Guinas, the soldier thought he would have protection with him. Aki reminded him that he was the former heir now, but he still believed he was stronger than the soldiers of the Guinas family. Even so, the fact that Felina offered herself as a hostage troubled him. Hina had spoken about Felina before, and he could not believe she allowed herself to get captured without a reason. Inside the bandits' cave, some of the men were already knocked unconscious on the ground. Felina knew it had been a risky move, but she was glad the bandits were enemies she could handle alone. More unconscious bandits lay behind her. She had hidden a sword under her dress and used it at the right time. She had also figured out which merchant was secretly working with the bandits and controlling them. Now it was only a matter of time. She wondered whether the bandits' reinforcements would arrive first or the rescue group from the fief. It became another gamble she chose to face and waited to see how it would end. In the quiet woods, Rin sniffed the air and pointed toward the path they were taking. Aki wondered why she was the one leading, but the soldier said it was the correct direction. Rin proudly talked about her powers as a great spirit, while Aki casually compared her to a dog. The soldier was surprised by how relaxed they all seemed. After all, Aki was once a lord, and now he traveled with elves and even a great spirit in his group. They soon arrived at the entrance of the bandits' hideout. The area felt strangely silent, and it did not look like many bandits were around. The soldier said there should have been at least 50 of them, so he expected at least 10 guarding the place. Aki thought they might all be gathered deeper inside. He told the elven sisters to hide their ears just in case. Right after warning everyone to stay cautious because the bandits had a hostage, Rin calmly walked into the cave. She found it hard to believe that humans lived in caves like wild animals. As she stepped inside, she mentioned to Aki, who followed behind her, that there were people lying unconscious on the ground. The soldier anxiously asked if the person was the young lady, but Aki said it was an old man, and even more, there were many bodies scattered around. The girls guessed they were the bandits, and wondered what could have happened. Suddenly, Felina appeared and said she had won her gamble. She said she would have been fine on her own. The group then realized that Felina had allowed herself to be captured on purpose, gathered information, and then defeated 10 bandits by herself. Aki said she was crazy. Nieto pointed out that Aki, of all people, was the last person who should be calling someone crazy. The soldier asked how Felina managed it when she was known to be bad at sword fighting. Felina admitted she was not skilled and had never even won a practice match. The soldier then asked how she defeated the bandits. Aki guessed that her practice opponent must have been Hina. Shocked, the soldier asked if he meant the commander of the Second Night Order. Felina confirmed she was childhood friends with Hina and had learned a few things from her. She said she could handle a few rough men, but she would not stand a chance against someone truly skilled. Aki realized her view of strength was unusual. Felina Luis was someone who was supposed to be respected for her sharp mind and natural talent as well. Felina mainly wondered why the eldest son of House Guinness was in her family's territory. Aki seemed surprised that she recognized him. Felina remembered that their lands were next to each other, so she had memorized the list of nobles. Still, she found it strange that the next lord of House Guinness was walking around with only a few attendants. When her eyes shifted to the two sisters, she felt something different. From the flow of mana coming from them, she asked if they were elves. Rin then said she was a great spirit and questioned Felina about her own mana sensing. Felina could not believe she was looking at real elves. She thought that House Guinness must have built a strong relationship with the elves. Aki said it was not exactly House Guinness. He admitted that he had been exiled from his family. Nieto added that House Guinness was more like their enemy now. Felina asked what they meant, and Aki explained what happened. After he was exiled and wandered through the forest, he was attacked by a monster who called herself a great spirit named Rin. After he defeated her, an elf named Saras came out from inside the monster. Saras asked him not to mention such an embarrassing story again. As thanks for helping the elf village, Saras and Nieto agreed to go with him to the royal capital. Nieto reminded him not to talk as if they were his belongings. Felina asked for a moment to understand everything. She realized that it was not House Guinness but Aki himself who had formed a bond with the elves, and now he acted as their representative. Aki turned to the sisters and asked if that was true. Nieto said that from her point of view, she could not tell which humans were friends or enemies except for him. Aki then said there was also Hina. He mentioned that Hina had told him to come to Luis' territory to meet Felina, who would become his greatest ally. Felina's expression softened when she heard that Aki had met Hina. She wanted to hear more, but Aki said they had something important to handle first. He called Rin over. A nearby soldier asked what was happening. Felina stated that they were surrounded. Bandits stepped out of the trees. Their leader said he heard his men had captured a woman worth a high price, and now, seeing 2 more women, he thought he could earn even more. He also said they seemed too energetic for his liking and decided they needed to be taught a lesson before being sold. The bandit leader saw that the 2 still seemed full of energy, and he thought he needed to make them calm down first. Felina recognized the man. She never expected someone with such a big name to appear like this. Aki then told Rin to begin her part. Felina tried to warn them not to rush, but she stopped when she noticed the 2 sharing their magic. Aki became supercharged with power, and Rin changed into her mascot form. Felina felt shocked when she saw Aki covered in a spirit's aura. The bandit leader noticed they had some kind of strange trick ready. He reminded his men not to harm the woman because they planned to sell her for a high price. Felina asked Aki what his power even was and if he was sure about fighting. Aki said the bandits wanted a fight, so he felt he had no choice. She then asked if he even knew the man standing before them. She explained that he used to be an adventurer who made a strong name for himself. She wondered why they never got any information on the bandit's boss, but it turned out someone had already beaten him before. The soldier finally recognized the scar and the giant axe and realized the bandit leader was Gaburo the Bloodflame. Stories said that in his adventurer days he once defeated a dragon by himself. Aki still looked calm after hearing that. The elven sisters worriedly asked if he would be fine. Aki agreed that Gaburo seemed important, but he did not feel any dangerous presence from him like the one he felt from Hina. Neo replied that Hina was an exception, and Aki reminded him that he carried an inhuman great spirit with him. He also said he had eaten a mountain of weeds back in the elven village. Gaburo suddenly appeared in front of him while swinging his great axe and asked if those were Aki's last words, but he became confused when the axe struck a tree instead. Aki had blocked it using a shield he formed with spirit magic. Even Aki felt impressed. Rin felt proud of how strong it was and said she could create more amazing things. The bandits tried to attack Aki together, but a sudden burst of power pushed them back. Aki now understood how his power worked. If he condensed it and slammed it into something, he could use it for attacks. He also realized it could be used in many different ways. Since they could not strike Aki, the bandits turned their attention toward the woman, but before they reached her, roots rose from the ground and tied them in place. Even the elven sisters felt impressed by Aki's strength. Felina could only stand in silence. Gaburo brought out his dagger and complained about how they kept using strange tricks. He said Aki could have died without pain if he had allowed himself to be cut down. He smirked as he held the dagger that looked ominous. He said one hit from it was enough to spread agony through the body until the victim would rather choose death. Aki realized it was poison. Gaburo charged at him. Aki told Rin to repeat what she did earlier. Gaburo could not believe they were using the same trick, but Aki said he had improved it. Roots rose from the ground. The elven sisters noticed how he changed the roots into wooden spears. Aki called the technique Bard Brand. The wooden spears shot toward Gaburo. The ex-adventurer tried to defend himself with his dagger, but the weapon was easily pushed aside. Gaburo lost his grip and the dagger cut his own face. He screamed in pain while holding his cheek and rolling on the ground. The bandits shouted for him to hang on. Aki reminded Gaburo about how he had scared others by talking about choosing death because of the pain. He called him pathetic and asked Rin if she had a spell that could knock the bandit out. Rin said she had one. Felina could not believe Aki was being soft toward a bandit who tried to kill him. She then thought the spirits might simply be merciful. Ryan used a spell that hit the bandit's face with force and knocked him out. Felina changed her mind about spirits being merciful after seeing that Aki did not even know if that attack should be called magic, but the problem was solved. Felina asked them to let her process everything first. She listened to everyone's explanation, but her mind could not keep up. Her family knights started tying up the captured bandits. She then called Aki absurd. Aki said he could say the same about her. After hearing Felina's story, Aki reviewed her situation. First, she was working with goals that were different from Count Louis'. Second, she had personal interests in elves and spirits. Third, if they managed to subdue the bandits, they would earn her family's cooperation. Saras noticed how troubled Aki looked and asked what was wrong. Felina said she understood that Aki did not have a good impression of her father. Aki said he only knew about the Count from rumors. Felina said it was fine because the feeling seemed mutual. Since Aki was already exiled and no longer tied to his family, Felina asked if Viscount Guinas was truly an honorable person. Even if his aristocratic way of running the domain was ignored, the problem was his treatment of his sons Jill and Willem. He believed strongly in skill supremacy, so he let those two act however they wanted. There was also Aki, who had been expected to be the next lord yet looked harmless and was seen as incompetent. She told him to imagine the Viscount's face now that Aki turned out to be the opposite. Aki laughed it off. Felina admitted she did not see her own father as a saint. Still, he was strict with his subordinates and managed the domain with reason. His relationships with the capital and nearby countries were not bad. Aki felt he had gained an ally. However, Felina worried the situation was too large. For now, she planned to work carefully with the neutral faction she was familiar with to strengthen their position. But her family's influence had clear limits. Aki understood this. If things were easy to fix, Hina could have handled everything alone. In any case, Saras reminded them that they still needed to go to the capital. Nito said that had been their plan from the start. Rin asked excitedly if they would use the same carriage because she wanted to sit in the very front. While the others argued about their seats, Felina told them she needed to report everything to her father. She looked at Aki's group. There were two elves, a self-proclaimed great spirit, and the exiled next lord with strange and powerful skills. She wondered how she would even explain this to her father. Meanwhile, in the Guinas estate, the Viscount angrily asked if Jill had still not been found. The servants confirmed that they had searched a wide area, but there were still no signs of the 30 soldiers who went with him. They believed something had happened in the forest. The Viscount could not believe that someone who would become the next lord lacked the awareness needed in moments like this. Willem then appeared and told his father not to worry so much about Jill. He said Jill was different from their older brother and that he had soldiers with him. The Viscount said this was not only about safety. Jill had moved his private soldiers without permission and then lost contact right after being warned. Willem asked his father not to blame Jill. He said Jill would not do something selfish, but if Jill had truly found the elves, his position in the capital would be secured. He believed Jill had simply rushed to get results. Even though Jill had moved up as the successor, Willem remembered there had been no official announcement. The Viscount thought for a moment and decided not to talk about formal matters until Jill was found. The servants promised to continue the search. The Viscount let out a long sigh. Willem, however, thought about how foolish Jill was. Jill should have stayed quiet now that Aki was gone. so he could take the title without trouble. Jill was easy to control, so Willem only had to push him a little to make him act on his own. Willem smirked at the thought. He then asked his father if he could also help search for his brother. He said it would be a problem if Jill had run into danger, but there was a worse possibility. The Viscount asked what he meant. Willem said he was talking about the elves. Since they were beings that could bring huge profit to humanity if controlled, this matter could be far more important than the family title. If that was true, then Jill was betraying the family, and Willem believed he might be the only one who could stop him. The Viscount paused to think. Willem stood there with a wicked look that did not match his age. Meanwhile, Felina greeted her father when she finally arrived home. Everyone sat together and talked while they drank tea. Count Louis said he understood the situation. Aki expected him to understand things quickly as a count. The count explained that the higher a noble's rank was, the less they showed their weakness. He then admitted he did not understand half of what he heard. Felina already knew her father would react that way. Aki felt surprised that the count spoke so openly and wondered if he was different from the rumors. Still, the count found it hard to believe that beings he once thought existed only in fairy tales were now sitting in front of him. On top of that, Aki now had a special connection to the elves. The count asked Aki if he could guess what he was thinking. Aki looked like he did not know how to respond. Felina said that the fact that Aki was not even aware made things more worrying. The count struggled to believe him. He now needed to choose his words carefully. He explained that Aki was the one holding the reins now. He said that when dealing with nobles or royalty, bluffing was sometimes needed, but Aki had gained a power so strong that he did not even need to bluff. He warned him to be more aware of his own advantages and his unique position. Nito whispered to Aki that the count seemed to be a good person. Aki felt unsure how to respond. The count became more serious and asked what Aki wanted from the House of Lewis since he was the only person with a real connection to the elves. Rin said she wanted a carriage with many horses because she planned to be the one driving it. When she thought about it, Felina remembered they had broken one on the way. Rin said she wanted one that would not break this time. Aki told her to keep quiet. The count laughed a little and said he could give them as many as they wanted. Still, as a member of the House of Lewis, he said he could not end the matter with just that. Felina doubted Aki had a plan. Aki said he only wanted to head to the royal capital for now and had no real goal other than explaining his situation and the situation of the elves. As for House Guinas, Jill, who was supposed to be the next lord, had failed and was taken to the royal capital. For the elves, he had Saras and Nioto act as their representatives to speak for them. The count said that instead of having no desires, it seemed Aki believed he could manage things on his own. Aki tried to deny it. The count said it was fine since Aki had enough power. Even after being exiled from his house, he built a connection with the elves on his own and earned their trust. And from what he heard from Felina, Aki's combat skill was more than enough. Back when Aki was the heir of the Guinas family, he had been a completely different person from who he was now. The count then explained how the royal capital was filled with nobles who wanted connections with elves and other races, each carrying their own goals. While most nobles stayed neutral like House Louise and chose to wait and observe, some extremists planned to invade and take over the territories of other races. Even the so-called moderate faction that tried to balance everything had its own hidden motives and was not truly united. Aki believed the elves had enough mana to handle most military actions. He felt the real challenge was the political side that they still needed to figure out. He knew his father would not stay still either. Count Louis agreed and offered to share information and introduce Aki and the elves to possible allies in the royal capital as soon as possible. Aki thanked him for his help and for his kindness since the Guinas and Louis families had almost no past connection. The count explained that the stronger a person was, the more they wanted elves, spirits, and even Aki's power. He said it was safer to stay careful. Aki realized the count was very different from the rumors. The count then mentioned that Hina had returned to the capital, and that she had other people she wanted Aki to meet. Still, he noted there was someone Aki needed to meet first. He said politics were shaped by several things, including support from someone with authority and strong military strength. He reminded Aki that he might have the Knight Commander and House Louis on his side, but he still lacked one important thing, which was money. The count said this was one of the reasons people who wanted demi-humans, especially elves, acted the way they did. Felina then understood her father's point that if Aki had no funds, people would have fewer chances to take advantage of him. Aki agreed and knew he could not take action without money. Because of that, the count suggested visiting the great merchant Exiled next and trying to gain his support. Felina was shocked and tried to protest. The count agreed that the great merchant was not easy to handle and forming a bond with him would be very hard. That was why he chose to have Felina join them. He said she was the strongest support House Louis could offer Aki. Soon after, Aki went to rest in an open-air bath. The count assumed they were tired and told them to take their time. Aki could not believe he was experiencing a hot spring moment just like in those games. At that moment, someone called out to him. The count made his appearance and asked if Aki had rinsed himself properly. Aki saw that the count was not the type to cover his front. He had expected this and simply laughed it off. On the other side of the bath, the girls took a dip in the hot springs. Felina kept letting out long sighs. Saras wondered what kind of person Exiled was. Nioto wondered if he was difficult to deal with. Felina explained that the great merchant Exiled was an astute figure who built the Exiled company in a single generation. Many believed he was the most skilled person at moving money at the present time. Even Felina's father reached out to him at once for a deal, saying he was an important partner for their house. Niodo questioned if someone like that could be an ally. Felina stated that the great merchant would not be easy to sway. Even though he worked as a merchant, his first capital came from rewards he earned as an adventurer, which meant he also had real fighting skills. Nito wondered if being strong mattered. Felina only wanted to point out that the great merchant had no clear weakness. His high position alone gave him fewer openings. She mentioned the three elements her father talked about, which were military power, political influence, and financial strength. The great merchant held all three. If she could not offer him something he wanted, she would not even earn a seat at the business table, so she needed to figure out what that was. After hearing all of this, Saras thought the elves might serve as a strong bargaining chip. Felina explained that their kind held too much rarity and that humans carried many hidden motives. The wealth and fame gained from the elves, along with their beauty, long lives, and ancient items, were far beyond human understanding. Many powerful people were already scheming to claim them. Felina also had no intention of using the elves as a convenient tool. The elven sisters were surprised when they heard this. Felina felt she could not stay still. She needed to gather clear information about Exiled right away. As she tried to leave, someone hit her from behind and splashed water on her, making her fall into the bath. Remin laughed and showed how much she enjoyed the water. She challenged Nito to a race. Nito reminded her she was not a child and complained about the noise. Remin then splashed water on her, forcing Nito to chase her. Saras went to check on Felina to see if she was okay. Felina got out of the water and laughed. She could not believe how carefree they were. She wondered if they even realized that their existence could influence entire nations. Saras said it was because someone had saved and helped them without caring whether they were elves or humans. As long as he was with them, she felt like everything would somehow work out. Felina thought she had no reason to believe that. Saras just laughed. Felina said people did not always act logically. Exiled and even Rin were similar to her since she could not read them. Saras giggled and said Rin was very hard to read. Felina thought that when facing a stronger opponent she had to be ready to take risks and play her cards wisely. The hand she held was not bad at all. She could put up a strong fight. She had the elves, a strong spirit, the knight commander, and above all, a man who was extraordinary but completely unaware of it. If she could use all of them well, she could even face the so-called great merchant. Meanwhile, Aki hoped he could get out of the bath. The Count was analyzing him and watching his muscles with attention. The next day, Aki found himself standing in front of a large stack of documents. Felina had gathered everything he knew about Count Exiled and told him to memorize it all. Aki could not refuse because Felina was very energetic and serious about it. Meanwhile, the Count instructed his aide to send a messenger ahead. He decided to speak with the key figures first and start preparing the situation himself. He also had proper documents made so Aki could move freely through the capital. Aki did not expect the Count to go out of his way to help them like that. Because of all the paperwork, Nito complained about how annoying human bureaucracy was. Aki then asked if elves had something similar. Nito explained that elves used contract magic instead. Spirits or mana itself enforced the agreements. Since the pact was written directly into the soul, its effects could even be passed down to future generations. Salas added that it was similar to the bond Aki had with the elves, since their connection was also etched into their souls. Aki was surprised to hear that. He had only recently reincarnated into this body and wondered if he was the one who should be benefiting from it. Felina was amazed when she heard about contract magic for the first time. She felt that the mana involved was very pure and new to her. Aki noticed that she looked like an excited fan. Rin was also able to use contract magic since she was a great spirit. Seeing this, Aki assumed he could do it as well, and he successfully demonstrated it without much effort. Felina was shocked and wondered if there was anything Aki could not do. Rin complained that Aki always copied her abilities. Aki then held her head and explained that he could only do it because he had absorbed her power. He also said that being a great spirit was not just for show while patting her head. This made Rin become shy and blush as she asked him to show more respect. Aki told her not to let it get to her head. Nito was surprised by how lively they all were. While Salas simply giggled, Aki turned his attention back to the Count and thanked him again for everything he had done. He said that having documents with the Count's seal made it much easier to deal with human society. The Count let out a sigh. He said that seeing contract magic in front of him made his paperwork feel very small and simple. Rin moved closer and looked at the documents on the table. She showed a small hint of interest. The Count asked if she was curious about the papers. Rin quietly nodded. Aki commented that there was not much need for reading and writing when living in the forest. The Count then wrote Rin's name on a blank sheet of paper and showed it to her. He told her that it was her name written down. Rin's eyes widened as she took the paper. The Count thought it would be good for her to know this for the future. He said that learning to write her own name was a good place to start. Rin stared at the writing of her name. She looked excited as she brought the paper closer to her face, and her tail moved happily. Salas smiled at how cute she looked. The Count then became serious again and said this was everything he could give to Aki and his group. It included a letter of introduction to Lord Wenzel Guag, messages to possible allies in the capital, and documents that proved House Luis officially recognized Aki and his group. He also placed trust in Felina. Felina looked serious and told her father to leave it to her. Soon after, Aki and the girls arrived at the royal capital by carriage. Rin complained and wanted to get out of the carriage. She even carved her name into it, saying it belonged to her. Nyoto scolded her and said the carriage would only get in their way if they brought it along. He also said they were lucky that Felina agreed to store it for free at her family's villa. Aki did not expect Felina to have an estate in the royal capital. Felina explained that her father often visited the capital for business. Aki was impressed and said he could clearly see the difference between their families. Felina then told him that he would be overwhelmed in the royal capital if he was already impressed by a simple townhouse. This left Aki confused. Felina pointed out that he did not realize his own value, so she decided to explain it to him clearly. She said he was the only human who had ever gained the elves' recognition. Because of his importance, she believed many nobles would gladly give him an estate in the royal capital just to gain his favor. She warned that if he let small wealth distract him, the nobles could easily take advantage of him. She told him to always act with full confidence. She added that pretending and reading situations was an important skill when dealing with powerful people, and it was the only way he could protect himself and his friends. Aki stood in silence for a while and looked at Felina. Felina asked what was wrong. Aki then said that Felina was actually a soft-hearted person. Felina got flustered and said she did not want to hear that from him. Even so, Aki realized she was right. Ignoring the issue could cause problems for them later. Felina looked confused. Aki then said that in the royal capital he was still officially a member of the Guinas house. Felina assumed he planned to use his family name for something, but Aki said it was the opposite. He would not be surprised if he ended up getting dragged into trouble involving his imprisoned brother. Aki and the girls went inside the mansion to discuss their next steps. Felina learned what had happened to Aki's brother. From what she understood, Jill Guinas was a complete sociopath. She also learned that Jill had gone on a rampage in an elven village before being captured by Hina. Aki felt relieved and assumed that everything would be fine if Hina was the one watching over his brother. Felina also hoped that was true. Felina confirmed that Hina was strong, but she did not have much skill in politics. Because of that weakness, it would not be surprising if she got pulled into something complicated or messy. Felina said that if they could meet Lord Wenzel quickly, then their top priority should be Hina. Suddenly, a servant knocked and entered the room to report that an urgent visitor had arrived requesting an audience. Felina reacted with surprise and questioned what kind of person would come without sending a messenger first. The servant explained that the visitor was the fourth princess, Claire Forcelia, who had come looking for her. Felina was shocked by the news. Aki remembered seeing the fourth princess listed as one of Hina's allies. Felina then clarified that Aki was likely thinking of the third princess, Noelle Forcelia, who was known as a sensible woman from the moderate faction. Aki then assumed that the visitor might be an enemy, but Felina did not go that far. Instead, she described the fourth princess as someone who was extremely difficult to understand. The fourth princess waited and sat down for tea while she was being received. Felina went to greet her and expressed that she did not expect such a high-ranking guest to visit them. She also apologized for not being fully prepared to receive her. Claire said it was fine because she was the one who suddenly showed up without notice. Felina then asked nervously what brought her to visit personally. Claire replied that she was not there for Felina but for Aki Guinas. She added that she assumed it was just Aki now. Aki did not expect the princess to already know about the current situation of his household. Even so, the princess reminded him to show proper respect and said there was no need to feel nervous around her. She asked them to speak normally. Aki then asked if the royal family already understood the current situation. Claire said it was all because of her skill. She revealed her right eye, which glowed slightly and showed a symbol in her iris. Felina was shocked, while Aki stood frozen. Claire explained that her skill was called Glass Eye. It was a type of magic eye that revealed whatever was reflected in her right eye. Aki felt the princess's mana enter his body and sensed something unusual about it. Claire also said the feeling was intrusive. Aki was surprised that she noticed it. Felina pointed out that Aki's face easily showed what he was thinking, and told him to stay calm at all times. Claire then said that hiding things from her would not work. She also told them to bring out the elves who were eavesdropping because they all needed to talk. Felina and Aki became nervous. Nito suddenly opened the doors. Salas and Rin followed her inside. Rin looked sleepy but became excited when she saw the sweets on the table. She said they looked delicious and wanted to eat them. Aki stopped her and told her to read the room, reminding her that they were in the presence of a princess. Claire sat quietly as she watched them argue. She then asked everyone to calm down and gave Rin a cupcake. Rin took a bite like a dog being fed. Claire told them not to stay guarded because she was going to explain what she wanted. Aki asked what it was. Before she could answer, Claire asked Aki if there was anything he wished for. Even though she was part of the royal family line, she was still royalty. She said she could grant any reasonable request. Aki thought for a while as he remembered Felina's earlier words. Claire told him not to be too cautious of Felina since she had noticed that Aki had gained a very capable advisor. Felina flinched when she heard this. Claire did not want to go through long questioning. She simply wanted to know what Aki planned to do with his connections to the elves. Aki then realized that the princess had been reading whatever came into his mind. He felt worried and asked if she really had that kind of ability. Nido also became concerned. Claire told her not to worry because she could not read elves since their mana flow was different. Even so, Aki still did not know what to wish for. Nido could not believe he was just casually lost in thought while someone was reading his mind right in front of him. Aki admitted that nothing important came to his mind. He said he would be happy if he could simply live a quiet and peaceful life. The princess was surprised because his words seemed honest. Saras giggled and said that Aki did not have a single dishonest bone in his body. Nido said that this was actually what worried her. Rin laughed at Aki and called him empty-headed. Claire then quietly stared at all of them. Aki scolded Rin again. Based on what she saw, the princess felt that she could probably trust them. She continued to watch Aki and the others as they made a lot of noise. She quietly looked at Aki and thought about whether she should trust him. Aki then learned from the princess that they were heading to the castle. Claire explained that Aki could no longer use the Guinas family name. If he needed to deal with nobles and merchants, she suggested that he should get a proper title. Nido remembered that Felina's father had already made arrangements for them. Felina agreed and said her father had secured the bare minimum for their situation. However, the support of House Lewis was still nothing compared to the support of the royal family. If Princess Claire decided to personally support Aki, then everything would change. Claire quietly sipped her tea and did not say anything. Nido asked what that meant. Felina explained that the views about demi-humans were divided between moderates and hardliners. Still, neither side fully agreed on everything. Within those groups, the 2 princes and 5 princesses each had their own goals. Hearing this made Nido realize how complicated humans could be. Claire then placed her teacup down and said that her sister Noelle, Tenaria, and she herself all shared the same goal. Aki remembered seeing Princess Noelle's name on Hina's list, but he asked who Tenaria was. Claire explained that Tenaria was the 5th princess and the youngest among them. She also said that Tenaria never had a formal debut, so it made sense that Aki did not know her. Aki could not tell her that he often lost focus during history class because he never thought he would meet any members of the royal family. He did not know any of them at all. Claire looked at him with a blank expression as if she understood what he was thinking. Aki asked Claire what her goal was. Claire said it was almost the same as everyone else's. Aki asked her to explain. Claire brought up the demi-humans, especially the elves. She said she wanted to control everything related to them. The elves looked worried. Aki told her to wait. He said that was not her real goal and was only a way to reach something else. Claire looked surprised. Felina asked what he meant. Aki scratched his head and said it was just a guess. He felt that Claire was not acting out of greed. Princess Claire let out a sigh. She was surprised that he figured it out even though he did not know the names of the princes and princesses. Aki was shocked that she knew that about him. Claire then shared her true goal. It was about Tenaria. She wanted to protect her younger sister's place. Felina said that made sense. It explained the strange actions Claire had been taking lately. Claire said the fight for power in the capital was harsh, and she believed Felina already knew that. At that moment, all the royals were stuck in a dangerous situation. Because of certain reasons, Tenaria had no political support at all. A young princess without someone to protect her was an easy target in the fight for the throne. Claire could take care of herself, but her younger sister could not. Aki understood right away and agreed to help. Neo could not believe the princess had not been direct from the start. She felt like she had been too cautious for no reason. Salas said Claire was a kind and caring older sister. Claire was caught off guard by their words and began to stumble over her own. She said her older sister Noelle felt the same way. Felina noticed that Claire was blushing. Aki felt a bit jealous when he saw how close the siblings were. Claire continued to explain that during times of peace, the balance of power depended on influence over demi-humans. Every noble and royal had been secretly planning ways to outsmart each other. Nido told the princess to stop being vague and get to the point. Claire then spoke clearly. She wanted Aki and the elves under his command. Her goal was to protect her younger sister. She wanted Aki on their side so that Tenaria would never be used or harmed by anyone. Aki scratched his head and said he could not refuse that request. Nido could not believe he agreed so quickly without thinking it through. Aki said it was for the sake of protecting a child. Nido agreed with that reason, but she still wanted him to be more careful when making decisions. Claire smiled, feeling pleased that they were willing to help. Nido then asked her to wait. Claire admitted that her real proposal was different. She wanted Aki to marry her younger sister, Tenaria. Aki froze for a moment, then shouted loudly in shock. Claire covered her ears. Aki asked her to wait, pointing out that Tenaria was still just a child. Claire clarified that she did not mean it would happen right away. She explained that Aki's current status was too low to marry into the royal family. Because of this, she wanted him to build real political power. Nido questioned what the princess was talking about, while Salas tried to calm her down. Claire told Aki to prove his worth as a noble and gain the trust of the court. After that, he would be able to take Tenaria in and ensure her safety. Aki told her to calm down because there were many problems with the plan. Claire insisted that she was completely serious. Rin innocently asked what they were even talking about. Felmina then thought about the path they had planned to take. She said that a royal marriage was actually a very practical choice. It would give them strong power against Lord Wenshelg. Aki felt uneasy and asked if she was serious. Claire explained that Aki's fame would only grow because he was the only human connected to the elves. She said that many people would soon send him marriage proposals, no matter what. When that happened, she wanted him to act wisely so their family would gain the most from it. Aki did not know how to respond. Claire then suggested that they go to the castle right away since Aki needed to meet his fiancée. Soon after, a nervous Aki stood in front of a serious hyena. The king stepped forward and officially announced the duel between them. He declared that the duel had begun. Many people watched the scene. Aki wondered how he ended up in that situation. Earlier, Rin had drooled as she stared at a large feast. She felt excited and wanted to jump in and eat right away, but Aki stopped her. As usual, he grabbed her head to hold her back. Everything had moved very quickly. Before Aki realized it, they had been invited to the royal castle. They were now attending a banquet after meeting the king. The second, third, fourth, and fifth princesses were there with them. Even the king was present. Aki was having dinner with the royal family, but he had forgotten the table manners he had learned. Rin kept struggling, eager to eat the delicious food in front of her. Aki told her to calm down first. The king laughed and told them to relax. He said he did not expect them to act like nobles, and he especially did not expect that from a great spirit. Claire agreed. She said it was a great honor for them to be with Aki, the chosen guardian of the elves and the elves themselves. Even so, Aki still could not fully understand the situation. Nito said they had already finished the formalities earlier. Aki agreed and remembered their meeting with the king. It had felt like a performance where the king officially welcomed them. Many important political figures in the country had been there. At the very least, Aki felt relieved to see that Hina had acted like her usual self. Back in the present, Saras formally thanked the king for his warm welcome. Aki was impressed by her polite behavior. The king then said he could not even count how many rulers in history had only dreamed of welcoming elves as guests. He wanted to treat them with the highest honor because he saw this as a rare and special chance. However, just as Nito had said earlier, it was no longer a time for strict and formal behavior. The king asked everyone to raise their glasses to celebrate their meeting and to wish for success together. Because of that, Rin was finally able to enjoy the delicious food. She reacted with excitement and said it tasted far better than Aki's dried meat. Aki admitted that his food was not that great. Rin also drank a thick and sticky liquid from a bowl. Aki pointed out that it was soup. At that moment, the fifth princess laughed softly and said she also liked that soup. She offered Rin some lamb pie. Rin happily accepted and started eating it right away. Aki watched her for a moment. This was Tenaria, the girl he was supposed to marry according to Claire. He then glanced to the side and noticed that the second princess had looked nervous the whole time. Even so, she did not seem like a bad person. As for the third princess, she was one of the allies Hina had mentioned. She was known as a calm and reasonable person who worked closely with Claire. The king himself also turned out to be much more relaxed than Aki had expected. The king told Salas that building a relationship with the elves had always been his kingdom's greatest goal. However, there were very few examples from the past, so he worried that he could not be sure all his people would behave properly. Salas calmly explained that the elves came from a small and close village, so misunderstandings were rare for them. She said she could only imagine how heavy the king's burden was while ruling such a large nation. Neo felt proud of her sister. Aki was surprised by how impressive Salas was. He thought that if he had known this would happen, he should have paid more attention during his etiquette lessons. Felina seemed to sense what he was thinking and told him he was doing fine. She explained that a good leader surrounded themselves with capable people. If his allies were skilled, then it meant he was leading well. She also said that Aki had a special ability to bring everyone together. She advised him to leave the difficult politics to those who were better at it and focus on showing strong confidence. Aki realized that Felina was right. Everyone had relied on him, even when he was exiled. He understood that he just needed to focus on what he had to do. At that moment, the king called out to Aki. He said it was clear that the elves' willingness to open their hearts to the kingdom depended on Aki and his decision. Aki felt confused. He looked at Salas, who was smiling, and wondered what she had told the king. Claire then stepped in. She said it was natural that they also wanted to build a stronger connection with Aki and through that create a lasting alliance with the elves. However, she pointed out that he first needed to prove his worth. She agreed that Aki was very valuable to the kingdom, but in the eyes of the public he was still just a commoner without a title. Because of this, ambitious people might try to look down on him or use him for their own gain. In simple terms, she wanted him to show his strength for everyone to see. Because of that, Aki ended up facing Hina in a duel. The duel between Aki and Hina officially began. The two quickly clashed their swords. Hina wore a confident smile while Aki gritted his teeth and blocked her attack. The crowd was shocked. Hina was known as the strongest warrior in the kingdom, so no one expected anyone to stop her strike so easily. As they watched more closely, they realized the boy fighting her was the son of the House of Guinas. They also remembered that Aki's younger brother had been arrested just the other day. Some people reminded the others to stay quiet since the matter was supposed to be confidential. Even so, many were confused. They could not understand why a sudden exhibition match was being held with someone surrounded by suspicion. It made them question what the king was planning. Felina noticed more nobles and military officers arriving in the area. Seeing this, she decided the time had come to move forward with their plan. The crowd's attention suddenly shifted to the balcony, where Saras and Nito were seated as they watched the match. The spectators were stunned to see real elves standing before them. Many had only heard stories about elves and never believed they truly existed. Their beauty quickly captured everyone's attention. The nobles became uneasy. They could not believe the king had already formed connections with the elves without their knowledge. They were even more frustrated that they had received no reports from the head of the Guinas family. Some immediately sent messages in panic. With her sharp hearing, Nito could hear every word being said around her. She found humans exhausting. She could not understand how people from the same country could so easily distrust one another and turn into enemies. Still, because of someone kind like Aki, she started to think humanity might not be as bad as she once believed. As Salas tried to calm her sister, Princess Noelle suddenly spoke about how shocked she truly was by the situation. She explained that some humans wanted to capture elves for their own selfish goals. Some hoped to control politics, some wanted wealth, and others were after the elves' powerful mana and rare artifacts. Still, Noelle also believed that not all humans were the same. She said there were people who truly respected and admired the elves, and she considered herself one of them. Nito pointed out that she already knew humans came in many different kinds. Salas reassured Noelle that her sister was actually kind-hearted. Hearing this embarrassed Nito, who quickly tried to move past the comment. She then complained about how their great spirit was acting too comfortably in front of the human princess. Rin was sleeping peacefully on Noelle's lap while Noelle gently patted her head with a smile. Noelle admitted that she had felt intimidated after learning Rin was a great spirit. However, after spending time with her, she realized Rin gave off a warm presence that made everyone around her feel at ease. Nito disagreed and believed Rin was simply acting like an overly attached wild animal. Seeing how close Rin had become with Noelle, Felina started to believe the princess could be trusted. However, one important issue still remained. Felina stepped forward and asked the king for permission to speak. The king told her to lift her head and reminded everyone that as Aki's companion, her words deserved to be heard. Felina asked if everything was truly alright, saying she understood his intentions but felt the situation was moving too quickly. While continuing to watch the duel between Aki and Hina, the king explained his reasoning. He wanted to make it clear as soon as possible that the royal family had formed close ties with the elves. He also wanted Aki and the others to witness the current state of the kingdom with their own eyes. The second prince, Caius, suddenly blamed the kingdom's weak foundation for the current problem. He believed the kingdom was so unstable that the people around them actually thought capturing an elf would let them control national politics however they wanted. He remembered that elves, like many other demi-humans, lived in small settlements scattered across different areas. Because of this, he suggested using force to suppress them and place them under the kingdom's control. He confidently claimed their military was strong enough to make it happen. The first prince, Victor, tried to stop him from saying such things in front of the elves. However, Case brushed it off and said he was only speaking the truth. The two brothers had always been on opposite sides, and Victor could not properly argue back. Instead, he broke into a cold sweat. Noelle was shocked by her brother's harsh words. Salas, who stood beside her, was equally surprised. Nearby Tenaria had to calm down the furious Nito. In contrast, Gaius simply let out a short laugh at the heavy silence that filled the room. Victor started feeling a headache coming on. His attention then shifted to Aki, who was now revealed to be the son of a former Viscount. Aki had suddenly appeared at an important moment while being accompanied by elves, making his presence even more unexpected. Victor could not help but wonder how Aki's involvement would affect future events. At the same time, Aki gritted his teeth as he defended himself from Hina's attacks. Hina was pleased to see him again after a long time and noticed that he seemed to be doing well while also gaining new allies. As Aki continued blocking her strikes, he thought things had been peaceful for him until she suddenly attacked him. Hina treated the fight as a light sparring match. She noticed his swordsmanship had clearly improved and now looked like that of someone with proper training. Aki knew his noble background gave him some experience, but Hina pointed out that simple training alone would never be enough to defend against her attacks. In her eyes, his way of thinking, fighting skills, and physical ability all resembled those of an experienced veteran warrior. Aki kept to himself the real reason behind his sudden growth. His abilities had greatly improved after eating rare plants in the elven village. Even so, Hina made it clear that this sparring match had been ordered by the king. She wanted Aki to stop holding back and reveal his true strength. As a fellow warrior, she had long wanted to test his abilities in battle. Rin suddenly woke up and noticed that Aki was fighting Hina. She got excited and jumped off the balcony because she wanted to join the fight. Tenaria was surprised and quickly ran to the railing to watch her. As Rin slowly floated down, a strong magical energy surrounded her while her body became smaller. Everyone in the area fell silent, including the princes. At that moment, Tenaria realized that Rin was truly a great spirit. Rin landed on top of Aki's head and decided to help him fight Hina. Hina looked happy to see the great spirit after such a long time, but Rin quickly reminded her that they were enemies and should not act close to each other. Hina's smile instantly disappeared after hearing Rin's words. Rin then raised the stakes of the battle. She declared that if she and Aki won, Hina would no longer be allowed to hug her, cuddle with her, or act clingy around her. Aki became worried after hearing this and hoped Hina would not take Rin's challenge too seriously. Instead, Hina suddenly became quiet for a moment before her fighting spirit rose even higher. She now had a new reason to win and became even more determined. Aki could not believe Rin had only made Hina more motivated. Hina strengthened her body with magic and charged back into battle. Aki fought back as well, powered up while Rin cheered him on from his head. The others watched in nervous silence as the battle continued. In the next moment, Aki and Hina's swords collided, creating a powerful shockwave that sent dust and air rushing across the arena.